Between the years 1839 and 1842, a global drug trafficking war occurred between the UK and the Qing dynasty of China. This event would affect the course of Western powers in Southeastern Asia. Today on RO.TV, the First Opium War. Hello, and welcome back to RO.TV documentary. Before entering the war, I'll talk about the events leading up to it and what caused it. Chinese goods such as silk, porcelain, and tea were at an all-time high demand for British merchants. Yet, during the time, China was strict about their trading and would only accept silver in exchange for their goods, which meant British silver reserves were diminishing. Opium is a narcotic drug and came from unripe seed pods of the opium poppy in the British East India Company, and the British saw that as an opportunity to pay for mass amounts of Chinese goods as well as to have more authority over the trade imbalance in China, which resulted in the UK illegally smuggling opium into China. After more than 1,000 tons of opium was smuggled into China each year by 1839, millions of citizens became addicted, and it led to a public health crisis with overdose effects such as hypnosis, cognitive impairment, seizures, comas, and possible death. In 1839, Chinese authorities were put under pressure, and so an imperial commissioner, Lin Zexu, decided to make an effort to stop the opium issue by organizing a resistance to seize vast amounts of opium from foreign ships by throwing it out in the sea, and forcing the British Chief Superintendent of Trade, Charles Elliot, to give up 2.37 million pounds of opium to China for public destruction to show their determination to ban the abuse of drugs. The British government was under pressure from the East India Company, which sourced the opium, and were outraged by the destruction of their opium. They demanded compensation, and of course, China refused, which was one of the main factors that started the 3-year war. Later that year, many other events also heightened the tension between the two superpowers, such as the murder of Lin Waxi, a villager from... Superintendent Elliot ordered the arrest of the sailors but refused to turn them over to the Chinese authorities. In retaliation, Chinese authorities put up a blockade against Macau, a region of China where the British had been staying. This caused them to be banned, and they had to move to Hong Kong. Then, the Chinese also prevented food from being sold to the British. On September 4th, 1839, Elliot gave an ultimatum stating that if the British were not allowed to trade with locals for food, they would use ships to open fire, and so the Chinese refused. What can I say? What can I say? This was the start of the battles for the First Opium War, which consisted of 100,000 Chinese defenders against approximately 20,000 British troops. Even though China held advantages over the British in terms of numerical troops, familiarity with battle terrain, and outstanding coastal fortifications, they were not fully utilized by China during the time. The British had 5,000 Royal Army soldiers and 7,000 Royal Marines who were richly experienced and extremely disciplined. In terms of commandership, the Chinese were incompetent and hopeless compared to the experienced British commanders, which resulted in a rout for the Chinese. The British commanders were even able to recruit Chinese mercenaries to fight alongside the British in pivotal battles during the entire war. The First Opium War had overall 3 major individual battles for control over Chinese territory: the Battle of Humen, Chuanbi, and Canton. I cannot discuss them individually for the sake of the video, but I can tell the result in all 3 battles. The British won with about 500 and the Chinese with 20,000 casualties. Like, how did you lose a fight against 100,000 against 20,000? That's like a 5-1. Anyways, as I said, the war lasted 3 years with several campaigns fought at naval and land battlegrounds, usually hundreds or thousands of miles apart, in southern, central, and northern China. Most of these battles were violent, bloody, and protracted, while others were controversial and oddly quick. The First Opium War ended in 1842 and resulted in the British forcing the Chinese representatives to sign one of the most unfair treaties in history, the Treaty of Nanking. This treaty stated that China had to pay reparations of 21 million, give up Hong Kong, and establish a tariff where the British could trade at 5 ports instead of the previous one and with whomever they pleased. The First Opium War changed many things on a global scale. First of all, Britain would soon gain more Hong Kong territory from 2 other treaties as a result of this war. China was on the verge of chaos, with Hong Kong completely unauthorized to Chinese officials for 156 years, along with opium being legalized in the country with lower prices and rapidly increasing consumption, which affected every part of China's society. The war also introduced China to Western influence, culture, and trade, but significantly reduced the Qing dynasty's prestige and power for the remainder of its time. The end of this war would start an era of international unequal treaties for China, Japan, and Korea. The war humiliated China, and that would affect its relationship with the UK indefinitely, while it made Great Britain seem fierce and superior as a Western power. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you have, hit that like button down below and subscribe if you want to support our channel. And we will see you on the next episode of RO.TV News. Later that year, many other events also heightened the tension between the two The British won.
Yeah, top again, bro.
Can you ever clap your hands what?
I'm not ready, bro. Bro, you got your project yet, bro?
Man, one day you're riding in your jelly car, the clouds leading to the heavens above.
Blooper.
Stop.